Hello booktube. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn, and today I think I've bit off a little more than I can chew after my recent illness, because I'm doing the mid-year freak out book tag and this has been going around, so I'm sure you know what this is, where we assess the books that we've been reading this year and see how we're doing. I'm not doing that well when it comes to how many books I've read compared to the other 4 years, the past 4 years. Now this is my 5th year on booktube, and I've slowed down a lot in my reading for many reasons. One is I have a hard time reading physical books right now, so I've been reading on my Kindle. But as I looked and assessed the books that were the best and the worst of the last, well, now it's past 7 months. I was on vacation in June, so I'm giving myself a little grace in that I missed a month where I was hardly reading. But I think I have some good books to show you and some disappointments. So let's get started. Now, I was tagged by Pat, if I didn't say that already, from Book Chat with Pat, and I want to thank her very much for always tagging me and keeping me in mind when I'm not able to do many videos. And so I thank you, Pat, and everyone else who might have tagged me. I haven't checked, but I know that Pat tagged me. So let's get started with the questions. And I can't promise, this is going to be an abbreviated version because, well, many reasons, which I'll get into. So the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far? Now, there were 2 books, but one is a reread. And I've had a lot of rereads this year, which I'm happy about, actually. But the best sort of, and it's a newish release, and I'll have it here, is the Safekeep. And let me give you her name, because it's a hard one. She's Dutch, and it's Yael van der Wouden. I couldn't believe that this was a debut novel, first of all. The setting is, and the time frame are particularly ones that I gravitate to. And the story was just amazing. Let me just tell you a little bit about it. It's set in 1961 Netherlands, which grabbed me already. I love the time frame. And it's the story of Isabel, a recluse who is living alone and meticulously attending to the family home in, and I'm going to probably mess this up, Overijssel province. And I was mesmerized from the first word to the last of this book. Now, what the Sunday Times said, and I agree, that it's razor sharp, perfectly plotted tale of desire, suspicion, and obsession between 2 women staying in the same house in the Dutch countryside during the summer of '61. And it's exploration of the legacy of World War II, about how women were treated in that era. And yeah, so it also has like, and I think that another booktuber, The Lonely Reader, said that it had a Rebecca-esque vibe. And his name escapes me right now. He's very famous on booktube, and I'll have his name down below, but I always watch his channel. Anyway, I think this was the best book that I've read. And what it taught me also is that I should not discount new releases, because I'm not a person who reads new releases necessarily, because for many reasons. One, I can't afford new releases, and the library, I'd have to wait many moons to be able to get on the waiting list for a new release. But this was a 2024 book, and I read it in the beginning of 2025, and that is why I'm glad that I do look at new releases, and I have done so for this video. So that is, I would say that is my favorite book so far. Number 2, best sequel you've read so far. Now, I've been disappointed with sequels so far. I've read a lot of books that the first book was great. And for example, A Touch of Frost that I talked about, which is a mystery. I think a question is going to be, he's my favorite character, who is Jack Frost. But I didn't like the sequel as much. So, and this happened quite with Martha Grimes, and it happened with a lot of mysteries that I've read, and those are usually the books that are sequels for me that I've read. So, yeah, I can't answer that question because I haven't read a good sequel yet. Number 3, new release you haven't read yet but want to. Okay, now I have to admit something, and that just before I did this video, I just took a look at the new releases. Nothing really grabbed me except one book a little bit. Now, I'm not a big reader of Joyce Carol Oates, but she has a book that sounds very interesting, and I might try to read it. And I don't know if it came out in 2025, but it's recent anyway, and it's called Fox. And it says that it's a novel of literary and psychological suspense about the dark secrets that surface after the shocking disappearance of a charismatic teacher at an elite boarding school. And one says, who is Frances Fox? A charming English teacher now new to the idyllic Langholm Academy. That's all I'll say about it. It sounds similar to other books that come to mind about like elite boarding schools and all this mysteries that go on. And I've read quite a few of them, even like old mysteries by, and I can't remember this Golden Age mystery writer who wrote a very classic book, and I'll have that down below because that just came to my mind. So that I think is number 3 for me. I'm not promising I'm going to read it, but it seems like it might be easier for me to get hold of. So that's the new release you haven't read. Most anticipated release is number 4 for the second half of the year. And I really don't have one yet, so I won't answer that question. Like I said, this is an abbreviated tag for me, but I hope you enjoy it anyway. 5 is biggest disappointment. And for me, that was the book Long Island by Colm Toibin. Now, I should say that I read Brooklyn, his first book. I liked it, but didn't love it. And the Long Island, and I should say it the way I say it in Long Island, because I'm from Brooklyn. That's how we say it. And my partner's from Long Island. Well, he's from Queens, but he moved to Long Island. Why didn't I like it? Well, I think the pacing was off. There was a total lack of resolution. I know that there's going to be more books coming out, but still, I found it quite disappointing. And there was some kind of like sort of a manipulation of the characters that didn't feel genuine to me. But I think I'll still read a third book from him because, well, it's my part of the world, and there are subjects that he talks about that are interesting to me. There are things that he talks about. Okay, so biggest surprise. The biggest surprise was an author that I haven't read anything by, but I heard her name, Eleanor Donoghue, and it's The Wonder. I talked about it already in another video. Basically, it's about an English nurse who's brought to a small Irish village to check that there's a miracle that's happening in this small village, and she has to, with a nun actually, see if it's really true or if there's something underhanded going on. And I found it very sad, very hopeful, maybe a little too hopeful, and I was pretty mesmerized by the book. So I was surprised. So that's my biggest surprise, because it was Eleanor Donoghue is a new author to me. I know she's people talk about her on booktube, but I'd like to read something else by her. My favorite new author, debut or new to you, is Lina White, who is I would say a golden age American author who wrote a book that was turned into an Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Lady Vanishes. I found that book mesmerizing, so I read another book, Fear Stalks the Village, and it's about poison pen, and that wasn't as good as the first, so that sequel didn't work as well for me. But she's a wonderful writer. I want to read more by her, and I really recommend her as a very good mystery writer. Number 8 is newest fictional crush. I don't have fictional crushes usually. When I was young, I had a fictional crush on Peter Pan, but I don't know if that counts. I have author crushes, and to prove that, I'm still looking for this very out-of-print book about Betty Smith, called Betty Smith, the author of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So that shows you that I do have an author crush on Betty Smith. I want to know more about her. She was brought up in the same era not quite same era, 100 years before, or 50, 60 years before me, but in the exact same area that I was brought up in Brooklyn. I did this as a buddy read and an attempted group read that didn't work out as well, but the 2 people who read it loved it. Well, 3 people, sort of. But I love A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and I think that's coming up soon, so I won't talk about it now. But I will show it to you now, because, well, I'm going to go books that made me happy. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn made me happy, because I found out so many things about my neighborhood. For example, I found out that a bus that I took, that was a trolley, it was called the Wilson Avenue bus, and this is a bus I took all the time near my house. And I found out in this book that the name of that Wilson Avenue, it happened to be a German name during World War II, and they changed it to honor President Wilson. And I didn't know that, so every time I reread this book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I feel happy about reading, happy about the place I was brought up in, and memories that come back to me as a child. And I know that my good friend Jack from Spread Book Joy, who I met in London, which was such a joy, also found something for her to feel a kinship with. And I think if I find her video on this, I will link it down below. But she also found something that reminded her of her childhood and how she felt as a child. Because Francie is universal. She's the so maybe she's my fictional crush, or somebody that I felt maybe I knew, or I was sort of like her, but not exactly. So that's a book that made me happy. Now I'm going to go back to my newest favorite character, which I already told you was Jack Frost from A Touch of Frost. And I'll try to have that book here. Now, A Touch of Frost was the first book in his book about this detective during the 80s. And why I say that It might not be for everyone. There's a lot of misogyny and ageism and very things that aren't PC or acceptable in our time frame that might turn you off about Jack Frost, period, and the books. But if you can take that into consideration, that it was written during that time, that men who have still a long way to go treated women as objects, which is very interesting, because another book that I'm reading that I just finished did not grab me, and this was written, I'm talking about Jane Austen, and I'll come to that, but it almost has the same problems, or more problems, because it was written in that time, yet because of the way Jane Austen wrote, it doesn't come off as so brash as when you talk about how women had no agency. And we still, like I said, have a long way to go. But that book didn't grab you, even though there were things in that book that showed women to be very much under their husbands, their fathers, had no money, and how horrible it was for women not to have money, a personal income. Okay, so the next question is, favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year? Now, I don't watch many movies. I'm not a movie watcher in general, but there was a book that I did see the movie to. The book was Dylan Goes Electric, about Bob Dylan, and when he made the big, well, it was a big thing because he was a folk singer, and he went electric at, I think it was the Newport Jazz Festival, where he went electric. And the movie I saw, and I saw it twice. I saw it in the movies, and I also saw it on a plane. It's called A Complete Unknown, and I loved it both times I saw it. I don't think it's completely accurate, at least not a complete story of his life, but it does show that part, that particular time when he was a complete unknown, and how he came to New York, into Greenwich Village, which we call the Village, and he started a relationship with Joan Baez and another woman. So it was very interesting. I think his name is Thomas Chalamet, did a wonderful job playing him, and I would see it a third time. So that's my favorite book to film adaptation. Now, the 13 is the favorite review you've written this year. I don't do many book reviews on my channel, though I want that to change. But what I do is, when I talk about a book, sometimes I do a review in, for example, my video, my top 10 books of 2024. I think it did very well compared to my other videos. And I think part of the reason is that I did mini reviews of each book that were my favorite books. And maybe I went a little long, so they were real reviews. So that's sort of my favorite video. So 14 is most beautiful book you've bought so far or received. Now, this is very interesting, because I just received this book, and I'll just say it's my very good friend, and I'll call her S, and it is Jane Eyre, and it is the most gorgeous book, gold, what do you call this, leaf? It goes around the back, and it's going to be, and it's Jane Eyre, I told you it's Jane Eyre, and it's going to take a good place on my bookshelf. And I should say that this year I am doing a lot of book unhauling because next month I'm going to be 75, and I want to make sure that the bookshelf that I leave for my loved ones are books that they can see. These are the books that were important to my mother. Now, I'm being pretty depressing right now, and I don't plan to go anywhere soon, but I have been through a really bad illness lately, and it does bring to mind mortality to hit, and I'm very lucky to hit, if I do, which I hope to do, 3/4 of a century years old, 5 years on booktube, and I'm grateful. I'm very grateful to still be here, to be as healthy as I am, and to keep receiving and looking at beautiful books like this. Now I have some hand issues, so if I read this in this copy, or maybe I'll just look at it from time to time, but I would have to put it on a table because not only are my eyes not doing so well, but I have really bad joint problems in my hands. And I'm kind of blaming it on my iPhone. I think that my iPhone is really heavy and I tend to hold it a lot. So I'm trying not to do that so much. But now that I look at the font on this, it's a really good, I'm wearing glasses, but it's a really doable font. So I think that if I read Jane Eyre this year or next, I might read it in this beautiful version, this beautiful book. So thank you, my dear friend who sent it. I appreciate it and I value your friendship. Okay, so what's the next question? Well, it's the last question. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? Now, I guess I should say that I don't need to read any books. I'm not putting myself into that pressure or to be a competitive reader. I'm going to read for pleasure. Well, we all do read for pleasure, but as a booktube creator, we have to think of, or we tend to think of, how can I make my video interesting? How can I bring books to my subscribers who maybe want to know about certain books? But I have to also be true to myself. And I realize that, for example, there aren't many sad books that made me cry in so far this year, and that was deliberate because I didn't want to cry this year. The last book that sort of made me cry was last year. It was Claire Keegan's book, and I cried at the end of it, and the movie was The Quiet Girl. The name escapes me right now of the book, but I will have it down below. I saw the movie, I cried. I read the book, I cried. And Claire Keegan tends to do that to me. But it was a good cry in that sense. The bad cry is the books that I'm not reading right now tend to be Holocaust memoirs. And I have a collection of them. And I had a new one that I showed you last well, it wasn't really it was a trial of a man who was a 21st century trial of a guard at the Auschwitz death camp, and I talked about it, and I'll have it down below, but I couldn't read past the first few pages because of the same thing. I don't want to read right now anything that's going to make me sad, because there's so many books that can make me happy, right? I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you haven't done this tag yet, please consider yourself tagged. I usually don't do that, but I really don't have the energy right now to go and see who's done the tag, but I've watched many booktubers do this tag, and some of my favorite booktubers who have done this tag, and some of other booktubers who don't do tags at all. So I better not say anything. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And please leave a comment or say hi in the comments, because I can't tell you how much my last video, the comments were so beautiful and made me feel so happy that made me want to continue doing videos and made me want to continue reading. So until we meet again in the next video, I hope sooner than later. I'm trying to do one video at least a week until I get my strength back. I will bid you aloha.